The invitation came in a cheap cream envelope, the kind that screams bulk printed. A gold foil crest of Ridgewood High, class of 2015, glittered on the front like it still mattered. Inside, the card was embossed with curling calligraphy. "You're invited to relive the magic." Someone had added a post-it in Ashley Cunningham's perfect sorority girl handwriting. "Can't wait to see what became of our little charity case, XOXO. Aisha Thompson stared at the post-it for a long time. 10 years. 10 years since they'd voted her. Most likely to work at McDonald's in the yearbook. Since they'd photoshopped her face onto welfare brochures and taped them to her locker. Since the principal had looked the other way because her scholarship. Family should be grateful to even be here. 10 years since she'd eaten lunch, alone in the stairwell so no one would film her crying again. She was supposed to ignore it. She was supposed to be bigger than this. But the rage, quiet and calcified for a decade, cracked open like lava. She dialed the RSVP number and, when Ashley's syrupy voice answered, Aisha said only, "I'll be there," and hung up. The night of the reunion, the country club's valet line crawled with Teslas and restored Mustangs. Old cliques clustered under fairy lights, louder with every flute of champagne, retelling the same stories about keg parties and who hooked up with whose boyfriend. They wore the armor of mid-30s money, designer watches, veneers, the casual cruelty of people who never had to grow up. Ashley stood at the entrance in a backless white dress flanked by her minions, scanning every arrival like a bouncer at an exclusive hell. When the roar of rotor blades shattered the evening, every head snapped upward. A sleek black helicopter descended onto the manicured polo field beside the club, searchlights slicing through the dusk. The crowd went silent except for the mechanical thunder. The door slid open. Aisha stepped out first. She wore red. Not just any red blood-bright, liquid silk that poured over her body like molten metal, catching every light and throwing it back as fire. The dress clung to curves they used to call welfare thick, split high on one thigh, neckline plunging just enough to remind them she now owned the room. Diamonds glittered at her throat, her wrists, her ears, big enough to buy every car in the valet line twice over. Behind her, a man unfolded from the cabin. He was tall, sun-kissed, with the easy smile of someone who had never needed to prove anything. His suit was yellow, unapologetically, outrageously yellow, tailored so perfectly it looked painted on. The color should have been ridiculous. On him, it was royalty. Before we continue this story, go ahead and subscribe to our channel and like this video so we can bring you even more amazing stories like this one. Ashley's champagne flute slipped from her fingers and shattered. On the marble steps, Aisha walked forward, heels clicking like gunshots across the terrace. Cameras flashed. Phones rose. The helicopter blades slowed to a lazy thrum behind her, as if the night itself were holding its breath. She stopped 5 feet from Ashley, close enough for the other woman to smell the perfume that cost more than Ashley's monthly mortgage. "Hello, Ashley," Aisha said, voice smooth as the silk on her skin. "You said you couldn't wait to see what became of me." Then she smiled. Slow, lethal, magnificent. And the past 10 years of pain transformed into something radiant and merciless. Ashley's mouth opened. Nothing came out, because the man in the yellow suit slipped an arm around Aisha's waist, pressed a kiss just below her ear, and said in a voice that carried across the stunned courtyard, "Darling, introduce me to your friends." The charity case had come home, and she had brought the reckoning with her. Aisha Thompson grew up in the Carver Projects, where sirens were lullabies and the corner store sold dreams in nickel bags. Her mother cleaned offices at night. Her father existed only on a child support check that never arrived. But Aisha had a brain like a steel trap and a hunger that scared teachers. By sophomore year, she was the only black girl on the honors track at Ridgewood High, a private school 30 miles away that offered one full scholarship per year to prove they weren't racist. They made sure she never forgot she was the proof. The first day, a boy named Trent asked if her uniform was rented. Ashley laughed so hard she snorted. The teachers smiled thinly when Aisha answered questions correctly, as if intelligence from her was a parlor trick. She learned to make herself small, to speak only when called on, to eat quickly and disappear. But she studied. While her mother scrubbed floors, Aisha taught herself calculus under a flickering kitchen bulb. While classmates jetted to Cabo, she worked weekends at the public library, shelving books and memorizing the names of Ivy League admissions officers. Harvard waitlisted her. The guidance counselor said, "Maybe try a state school, sweetheart. Quotas are tight this year." She got into Stanford on appeal with a perfect 1600, sat in an essay titled, "The Cost of Being the Exception." The day the acceptance came, her mother cried so hard she had to sit on the floor. College was different. For the first time, Aisha was surrounded by people who looked like her and still expected greatness. She double-majored in computer science and economics, graduated summa cum laude, and took a job at a Silicon Valley startup that built AI for medical diagnostics. 6 months later, the company was acquired, her shares vested. Overnight, she was 23 with 8 figures in the bank and no idea what to do with silence. That's when she met Julian Harrington IV. He was the venture capitalist who'd funded her company's Series A. He walked into the room wearing a yellow suit the color of fresh lemons and asked the only question that ever mattered. "What do you want to build that the world says can't be built?" They argued for 3 hours about ethics, about profit, about whether technology could outrun prejudice. At 2 a.m., he took her to a 24-hour diner and ordered pancakes. She told him about the projects, about the scholarship, about eating alone in stairwells. He listened without pity, the way people listen to weather reports about places they intend to visit. 6 months later, he proposed on the roof of the building that now bore both their names, Harrington Thompson Labs. She wore red the night she said yes. He wore yellow. They never changed the palette. Now at 35, Aisha ran a foundation that funded STEM education in under-resourced schools and sat on boards that actually changed policy. Julian's family fortune had started in railroads and multiplied into clean energy. Together, they were worth more than the entire GDP of some small nations. And still, every morning, Aisha checked the locks twice. Because some fears are cellular, the reunion invitation arrived the same week. Ashley Cunningham Hale posted on Facebook, "Who else is excited to see how far we've all come? Some more than others, lol." The comments were a museum of casual cruelty. Fire emojis under old photos of Aisha's braids. Memories of the time they accidentally spilled soda on her cap and gown. Julian found her on the balcony that night, knuckles white around the balled-up invitation. "Burn it," he said. "I want to go," she answered. He studied her face. "You want to watch them choke on their own tongues?" "Yes." He kissed her forehead. "Then we give them something to choke on." They spent weeks planning. Not the entrance, that was easy. The aftermath, the moment when awe curdled into shame. Julian called in favors. The helicopter belonged to a rapper who owed him for early funding. The dress was custom from a Parisian atelier that only accepted 10 clients a year. Aisha chose the red because it was the color they once said, loud, girls like her should never wear. The night before the reunion, she stood in front of the mirror and practiced the smile that wasn't quite kind. Julian watched from the doorway. "You know you don't have to prove anything to them," he said softly. "I'm not proving anything to them," she replied. "I'm proving something to the girl who used to hide in the bathroom." He crossed the room, wrapped his arms around her from behind, yellow silk jacket against crimson gown. "Then let's go remind her she won." The country club ballroom smelled of orchids and desperation. Aisha walked in on Julian's arm, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Conversations faltered mid-sentence. A decade collapsed into a single inhale. Ashley recovered first, because Ashley always had to be first. "Aisha Thompson," she trilled, air-kissing nowhere near Aisha's cheeks. "You look expensive?" Aisha smiled with too many teeth. "I am." Cameras flashed. Someone whispered, "Is that Julian Harrington?" Another voice. "The Harrington? Like the actual billionaire? Ashley's husband? A real estate developer whose gut strained against his cummerbund. Looked like he'd swallowed his tongue." They made the rounds. Old classmates approached in waves. The ones who'd ignored her. The ones who'd joined in. The ones who now wanted selfies for their brand. Trent, who'd once asked if she showered with dish soap because she couldn't afford body wash, tried to hug her. She let him get within 6 inches before stepping neatly aside, so he stumbled. Julian never left her side. He greeted everyone with the same warm handshake and the same lethal memory. When a former teacher gushed about how far Aisha had come, Julian said mildly, "She was always brilliant. Some of us just took longer to notice." The cruelest moments were the smallest. A woman asking if Aisha's dress was rented. A man joking that Julian must be her sugar daddy. Each time, Aisha felt the old shame try to crawl back into her skin. And each time Julian's hand tightened on hers, grounding her. Then Ashley clapped for attention near the dance floor. "Surprise," she sang. "We have a slideshow of memories." The lights dimmed. The projector hummed. Photos from senior year bloomed across the wall. Prom court, all white. Homecoming, all blonde. And then, the ones they'd saved for last. Aisha at 14, braces and bad braids, accepting her scholarship certificate. While the audience slow-clapped like she was a performing seal. Aisha crying in the cafeteria after they'd dumped chocolate, milk on her white blouse. Aisha alone at graduation, no family in the stands because her mother had to work a double shift. The room tittered. Someone whooped. Aisha went very still. Julian's voice cut through the dark like a blade. "Turn it off." Ashley giggled nervously. "It's just nostalgia." Now, the projector kept rolling. Another photo, the yearbook page where they'd written, "Most likely to need food stamps" next to Aisha's name. Julian stepped forward. The yellow suit caught the projector light and glowed like the sun. He reached the laptop, closed it with one finger. The screen went black. Silence. Then Ashley, voice trembling with rage and fear, "This is a private event." Julian smiled the way great whites do. "I just made it public." He tapped his phone. Within seconds, the country club's Instagram lit up with live videos from every guest's account. Tags flying, Ridgewood reunion, Billionaire crash. The slideshow screenshots were already trending. Ashley's face drained of color. Aisha finally spoke. "You wanted to know what became of the charity case," she said, voice carrying without a microphone. "Here I am." She walked to the center of the dance floor. Every eye followed the red dress like it was the only real thing in the room. "I used to think if I was good enough, quiet enough, grateful enough, you'd treat me like a person. I was wrong. You don't hate me because I was poor. You hate me because I existed in your space at all." Someone started to boo. Security, hired by Julian weeks ago, materialized at the doors. Aisha kept going. "Tonight you get to see what happens when the girl you tried to break decides not to break." She gestured and the lights came up fully. On every table sat thick cream envelopes, same as the invitation but sealed with gold wax. Inside each, a printout of the guest's worst high school moment involving Aisha, complete with names, dates, screenshots from old Facebook posts that someone, Julian's private investigator, had archived for a decade. Gasps rippled outward. Trent found a photo of himself holding the container of chocolate milk, grinning. The former teacher discovered a scanned email where she'd written to the principal that Aisha's attitude was disruptive. Ashley opened hers last. It was a video, 16-year-old Ashley telling the camera, "We should make her kill herself. It'd be doing everyone a favor." The room heard every word through the speakers. Julian had wired hours earlier. Ashley screamed, "This is illegal!" and lunged at Aisha. Julian caught her wrist without effort. "Assault on camera," he said almost gently. "I wouldn't." The room fractured. Some guests fled. Others stood frozen, clutching their envelopes like guilty verdicts. Aisha felt the old stairwell girl inside her finally exhale. But it wasn't over. Ashley's husband, drunk and furious, shouted, "You think money makes you better than us?" Aisha turned to him. "No, it just makes the truth louder." Then she did the thing that broke the night wide open. She took the microphone from the abandoned DJ booth and said, "10 years ago you taught me shame. Tonight I give it back." She named them. Every prank, every slur, every teacher who looked away. She spoke calmly, factually, the way you recite ingredients. With every sentence, the room shrank, until the chandeliers themselves seemed to dim in embarrassment. When she finished, no one clapped. No one spoke. They only stared at the woman in red who had turned their nostalgia into a crime scene. Julian offered his arm again. Together they walked out the way they came in, red and yellow against the night, leaving the wreckage behind them. But as the helicopter lifted off, Aisha looked down and saw Ashley on her knees in the parking lot, clutching the envelope, sobbing into the asphalt. And something in Aisha, something small and human, ached. The video went viral before they touched down in Manhattan. Ridgewood red dress trended worldwide. News outlets looped the footage. The helicopter, the dress, Ashley's teenage death wish playing on endless repeat. By morning, sponsors pulled from the country club. The principal, long retired, issued a tearful apology on morning television. Ridgewood High's board announced an emergency meeting to review past culture. Aisha watched none of it. She sat on the terrace of their penthouse, barefoot, still in the red dress now wrinkled from helicopter wind. Julian brought coffee but didn't speak. Some victories taste like ash. At 10:17 a.m., Ashley called from a blocked number. Aisha answered. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Ashley whispered, "I'm sorry." Aisha closed her eyes. "I know. I was awful. We all were. I don't know how to live with it now." "You don't get to be absolved because it's inconvenient," Aisha said, but her voice cracked on the last word. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Ashley said. "I'm asking, how do you carry it? The hate you got? How do you wake up every day and not hate back?" Aisha looked out at the city, glittering and indifferent. "Some days I don't. Some days I want to burn everything down. But then I remember the kids who still eat lunch in stairwells, and I build something instead." Silence stretched between them, thin as wire. Ashley's voice broke. "I have a daughter. She's 7. I don't know how to teach her not to become me." Aisha felt the tears come then, hot and sudden. Start by telling her the truth about who her mother was, and who she chose to become after. She hung up. Julian found her crying. Not the pretty kind. The ugly, shoulder-shaking kind that rips out of the sternum. He held her until she was empty. That afternoon, the Ridgewood board offered her a public apology and a 7-figure donation to her foundation if she would help them move forward. She told them to mail the check and never speak her name again. 3 days later, Ashley showed up at the foundation's office unannounced. No makeup, hair in a messy knot, wearing jeans like a normal person. She carried a flash drive. "Every message, every photo, every video we ever took of you," she said. "I kept them. Like trophies. I want you to destroy them, or use them. Whatever you need." Aisha took the drive. Their fingers brushed. For the first time, Ashley looked her in the eye without flinching. "I don't know how to make it right," Ashley said. "You can't," Aisha replied. "But you can make it matter." She invited Ashley to stay, to see the coding boot camp for girls who looked like Aisha once did. Ashley sat in the back, silent, watching 12-year-olds build apps that diagnosed anemia in rural clinics. When a tiny girl with braids asked Aisha why she started the program, Aisha glanced at Ashley and said, "Because someone has to make sure you never have to hide in a stairwell." Ashley cried then, too. The real climax came weeks later, unplanned. Aisha received an email from a current Ridgewood sophomore, a black girl on scholarship. Attached was a photo, the cafeteria, where students now sat mixed, no empty tables. Someone had painted a mural on the wall, Aisha in the red dress, arms outstretched with the words, "She made room for us all." Underneath, in smaller letters, "Thank you for coming back." Aisha stared at the photo until the screen blurred. Julian found her on the terrace again. This time she wasn't crying. She was smiling. "It wasn't revenge," she said quietly. "No," he agreed. "It was resurrection." A year later, the Carver Projects had a new community center named after Aisha's mother. The dedication ceremony fell on a Saturday in June, hot and golden. Julian wore yellow linen. Aisha wore red again, but softer this time, like sunrise. Ashley came. She brought her daughter, a solemn child with Ashley's eyes and none of her cruelty yet. The girl handed Aisha a construction paper card that read, in purple marker, "Thank you for being brave." Aisha knelt so they were eye level. "Brave is just being scared and doing it anyway," she said. "You'll do it too one day." The little girl nodded seriously and hugged her. Ashley watched, tears falling without shame. Ridgewood High rewrote its scholarship program. No more single token student. They funded 20 full rides a year now, priority to first-generation kids. The cafeteria mural stayed. They added a second one. The girl with braids who'd sent the photo, now a junior standing next to Aisha. Aisha and Julian never attended another reunion. They didn't need to. The story had outgrown the room where it began. Sometimes, late at night, Aisha still woke gasping from dreams of chocolate milk and laughter. Julian held her until the shaking stopped, whispering, "You're here. You're safe. You won." And slowly she began to believe it. She kept the red dress in a glass case in her office, like a superhero costume retired from battle. Visitors always asked to take pictures with it. She let them. Some were teenage girls who saw it and straightened their shoulders a little taller. One day, a reporter asked if she forgave them. Aisha thought of Ashley's daughter, of the mural, of the 20 new scholarships, of her mother cutting the ribbon on a building that would outlast all of them. "Forgiveness isn't a gift I give them," she said. "It's a gift I give myself, and I'm still working on it. But I'm free." That night, she and Julian flew. Not by helicopter this time, but commercial coach. Because sometimes you need to remember what solid ground feels like. They landed in Nairobi to open the African branch of the foundation. Children waited with signs in Swahili and English. "Asante for seeing us." Aisha stepped off the plane in simple jeans and a red t-shirt. No one there knew the old story. They only knew the woman who had come to build. And for the first time, when she looked in the mirror, she saw not the charity case, not the billionaire's wife, not even the warrior in red. She saw Aisha, whole. Years later, when people asked how she turned pain into power, she never mentioned the helicopter or the yellow suit or the night she made an entire room choke on its own cruelty. She only said, "Someone has to go back and kick the door open so the next ones don't have to knock." And somewhere in a quiet Virginia town, Ashley Cunningham Hale kept a photograph on her desk. Her daughter standing beside Aisha at the community center opening, both of them smiling like the past had finally let go. The photograph had no caption. It didn't need one. Every morning, Ashley looked at it, before taking her daughter to the new, integrated preschool that had replaced the old country day school. She had sold the McMansion, left the junior league, and now taught 3rd grade at a public school where no child ate lunch alone. Some days, parents recognized her from the viral video and whispered. She let them. Shame, she had learned, could be useful if you didn't hide from it. Aisha never accepted Ashley's friend request. Some bridges once burned, stay ash. But once a year, on the anniversary of the reunion, a thick cream envelope arrived at Ashley's door. Inside was always the same thing. A single red ribbon and a short note in Aisha's handwriting. Keep building. And Ashley did. In Nairobi, in Accra, in Detroit, in Sao Paulo, red and yellow became the colors of classrooms that never asked a child to be small. Julian wore yellow ties to board meetings, where old men learned. New words like equity. Aisha wore red to every ribbon cutting. Every graduation. Every first day of school for a girl who once thought the world had no room for her. The last time anyone asked Aisha if the reunion had been worth it, she laughed, the sound bright and unburdened. "Worth it?" she said. "That night didn't just change them. It finally, truly, completely changed me." And somewhere high above the clouds, a woman in red and a man in yellow held hands and looked down at a world that was slowly, imperfectly, learning how to make room. The charity case had not just come home. She had built a new one. For everyone.